Hello and welcome back to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian and I'm back again with my brother Kevin. And we're shooting some more videos about whiskey. We've got a whole ton of glasses in front of us. And we're actually going to maybe be doing a video that's slightly more controversial that could get some people riled up. But it's not that serious. It's whiskey. We'll give our reasoning behind what we're talking about and everything. But we're talking about overrated and underrated today. You and I have a little bit of a different approach to what we selected today.
Yep.
But I thought it was a good idea because we've been watching YouTube, reading blogs, all that stuff for a long time. We see some consistent themes happening, and right now we see a lot of whiskey of the year type videos, and you can usually see some trends. But over the years, there's things that keep cropping up over and over again that are really highly respected. And it's not necessarily that we don't think that they're good whiskeys. We think that maybe they, at least for me, sometimes these bottles overshadow things that should be getting more attention. But people really focus in on, a small number of bottles, and it comes up year after year after year where other things seem to get left behind. So what I did is I have 4 whiskeys here that I kind of have as underrated whiskeys.
Okay.
And again, I don't actually, if you were to ask a whiskey geek about at least 3 of these whiskeys, whether these are good or not, they're all going to say yes.
Sure.
There's very obviously there's preferences and that sort of thing. There's one where maybe.
Okay.
That'll be the first one we drink just because of its proof.
Okay.
But again, it's more just an exorbitant amount of attention that come to some of those whiskeys, and I'll mention a couple of those later. But I do focus more on underrated. Let's talk about things that are more positive, with maybe a couple controversial. This is overrated later, but
Sounds good.
yeah. So I poured us some small samples here of a few of these, and I'm going to start with the first one. You don't know what this one is. I've talked about some of these with you over the course of the day, but I don't think I've mentioned this one yet.
Okay.
So at least for this one, before I tell you what it is, it's not going to be anything shocking, but let's take a sip and just kind of see what you generally think about this one.
All right. Pretty malty nose. Pretty standard. There's nothing too wild or crazy going on there.
Okay.
See what's going on here. Yeah, pretty easy sipper. Little touch of like a sour fruit maybe kind of in there a little bit, but malty. It is kind of like a almost citrusy. A little bit kind of like almost like a thickened, like the mouth coating is. It feels like it's maybe oilier than it really is, but it's pretty present on the palate. Yeah, it's not bad. I enjoy that.
So this one I picked because it's low proof. This is 43%. Now this is this is actually an older version because this is GlenDronach 12. So this is now this bottle still said non-chill filtered on it. I don't personally, from what I've read, I don't think too much has actually changed once the removal of non-chill filtered happened. It's more of they're complying with some SWA regulations and things like that. But I've been drinking a lot of Dalmore 12, and due to this my series that I've been working on, and I bought this bottle kind of alongside a lot of other core range bottles that I bought over the summer, and I've actually just been really liking this one.
Sure.
As like a starter dram or anything. You're right. It's not crazy. It's not going to blow your mind. It's a lower proof. But if you're looking for an alternative to Dalmore 12, something that's cheaper, this is definitely cheaper than that. And generally speaking, I really like. It's a different type of fruitiness. It's a little bit brighter, where the Dalmore it's a little bit more, a little bit deeper, richer, tobacco-y, that sort of thing. But this has got that bright fruit, and I've actually really been enjoying this one. So I'm going to call this
Very
one
nice.
out as an underrated one because nobody talks about this sort of whiskey.
Yeah. Although, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe modern, like if you go out and buy GlenDronach 12 today, it's going to present a lot differently than this one, right? Aren't they much darker nowadays?
I don't know. I haven't bought one of the new bottles yet.
Okay.
I mean, this was a new bottle to me, but they happen to still have non-chill filtered labeled bottles. So.
Yeah. Okay. That'd be interesting to find out because I think I've heard that since that's happened, they've gotten a lot darker in color. I don't know if it's changed the palette any, but
it'll be an interesting thing to find out one of these days. But
okay,
if I was going to recommend a 43% sherried whiskey for someone that's affordable and super accessible,
you can do a lot worse than this for sure.
I'd point them this way, especially if they're looking at if you're comparing it with the Dalmore Sherry Cask Select, which is also 43%. You want to save a few bucks. It's probably the way to go.
Nice, yeah. No, that's good.
All right.
Good start.
And it shows that I'm not a proof snob, even though I am. But that's... All right. So this bottle is going to be a bit of a change of pace.
All right.
So this one, we get ready for no more light and fruity palates here. We're ramping things up a little bit. This is a bottle that I think everybody likes, but I just never hear anybody talk about it recently. Like I said, a lot of the stuff that I have on here was on this palette has been talked about. So calling it underrated is a little weird, but it's just one of these bottles that seems to have fallen off of the spotlight.
Underrated in 2023.
Yeah, people take it for granted that it's there and it's always there and nobody's talking about it a lot. But I'll tell you what this one is up front. This is 46%. This is 15 years old. And if you're talking about 15-year-old age statements in 2023 that are affordable, this is definitely one of them. But this is Glen Scotia 15.
Okay.
So I just don't... seemed like there was a time where this was just talked about all the time as being just a great option. It's still relatively affordable despite the rise in prices. It's a Campbelltown. It's got a touch of Campbelltown funk. It's not like Springbank funky, but I mean, this has always been a solid choice. So
yeah, just again, just based on my viewing experiences, I feel like I almost see the 18 get talked about more than the 15.
And honestly, the 18 is really good, and you can maybe even make an argument that it's better than the 15, but it's considerably more expensive.
Yeah, which is weird that it gets talked about. At least, based on what I've seen, it gets talked about more, which is odd for being more expensive.
All right, well,
cheers. Cheers.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. That's
yeah, so much more dense, weighty.
You can tell the last one was 43%.
Yes,
and this one's
that's
46.
That's a big contrast there. So much more depth. A bit more like a dank, like it's a little bit like it's not funky, but
the peat's like a little kind of dirty and
it's dirty.
Soft. Yeah,
kind of reminds me of like a light, almost like a light Edgedour kind of a profile, but like more waxy. Which, that's a daily drinker all the time for me. And you're right. I definitely think underrated. I almost never hear anyone talk about the 15 specifically. It's either the 18 or the Victoriana.
Yeah,
Victoriana's got the two biggest ones. I think the double cask's been kind of coming on this year,
especially as a value. Especially as a value.
Yeah,
value buy for sure. I don't know if I've actually had a double cask.
No, me neither. Yeah, nice pour.
All right. Next, I talked about this in our last video a little bit. This I discovered through you and our blinds. Actually, the last two videos, I think we've talked about it. But this is Ben Riach, the Smoky 12. Now, the Ben Riach is a distillery that, alongside GlenDronach, that Billy Walker kind of brought back into prominence. And obviously, he's since sold them. I believe Rachel Berry is the one that's been kind of taken over both the GlenDronach and Ben Riach. But the Ben Riach is still making 46% ABV whiskey, and you don't hear talk about much ever.
Yeah.
Ben Romix gets a lot of shine, but even their core range is 43%. People complain about that a lot. But Ben Riach, I think, has a similar style, and maybe not quite as farmy, but it's a little bit more pretty. But Yeah.
Ben Riach was initially also on my underrated list, and then I think you mentioned it earlier that you'd be talking about it, so I think I've shifted directions a little bit. I do not understand Ben Riach. I don't think I've ever seen anyone almost really talk about Ben Riach's other than in passing.
Yeah. Even when Glendronach was really popular, I think that got really popular because of the older stock and the bottlings.
Yep.
But like the Ben Riach is like, nobody.
Yeah, the 3 or 4 Ben Riachs I've tried have all been great. On the back of that Smoky 12, I actually picked up a year or two ago. I picked up a 21, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
I've tasted. I think it was a 25-year-old Authenticus. I think one of the older 25-year-olds.
Yeah,
a friend of mine had, and man, that's
was
good.
it?
That was fantastic.
They have it at one of the bennies, and it's good on my consideration list in the past.
Yeah, I only got to taste it like once or so, but man, that dram.
I'm shocked at how little people talk about Ben Riach.
I mean, the fact that there's that bottle still sitting on the shelf here is kind of crazy because it's a very, very good bottle. I think it's gotten good reviews overall. But yeah, the Ben Riach, definitely one I'll be willing to talk about on the channel. Just try to get somebody talking about it at least. But
yeah,
cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, that nose is pretty for relatively heavily peated whiskey.
It's in the same ballpark on the nose, especially as the Glen Scotia. Really, it's not quite as dirty or quite as potent, but
man, yeah,
it's kind of in. It's in the ballpark, I guess.
Yeah, if Isla Pete's a little bit too harsh for you, this would be the next step down. If you're looking for that sweet spot, it's really good.
You get some toffee and chocolate, and just it's not. There's clearly cask influence, but it's not overwhelming the spirit or overwhelming the peat at all.
The balance here is lovely.
Yeah, it's really good. So the last sample in my underrated that I have a few other distilleries I'll mention, but this one is complicated because I think people will probably hear this and say, well, that's not underrated. But I think if you think about it, like, again, no one's talking about this. Part of that is because this is a classic malt that I think everyone, at least a few years ago, would say, this belongs on everyone's shelf. It's a great value. Okay. This is a stalwart of Isla in this case, right? This is one of the ones that is really representative of Scotch whiskey as a whole. And I don't know if the quality has dropped enough for it to have just not gotten the attention that it used to get. But I think some of these newer distilleries or hotter distilleries, let's say, because these aren't necessarily new distilleries, but like Lechic 10, Port Charlotte 10,
sure.
And a few of these other some of the newer distilleries who are coming on with like younger age statement peat have kind of taken some shine away from Ardbeg and their Ardbeg 10 bottling. And that's what we're drinking here. But so I think it's a combination of a couple of things. One, it's been around forever. Everybody knows about it, so people don't talk about it as much. It's not as popular. Two, there's some great whiskeys that have kind of come onto the scene, whether they've been around for a long time and we're just not paying attention to them, or they've just kind of started to get some hype.
Yep.
But there's also this third aspect in that people are kind of mad at Ardbeg. You, at least up to relatively recently, would have probably considered yourself an Ardbeg fanboy. I think you've come back down to earth on them maybe a little bit.
Yeah. I rode with them through some of their earlier ridiculous releases, and then I would say in the last 2 years, maybe year and a half, it just became a little too much for me. But I mean, their spirit's still great, and like you said, the 10. I've always been on the Ardbeg 10 train. I've been defending it for years, even from some of the detractors that I've heard. It's hard to beat.
But the Ugadal sometimes gets a lot of the attention from Ardbeg.
Yep.
But that bottle, at least in the States, has basically become unreachable for a lot of people.
I think the Ugadal's about twice as much as the 10.
Yeah.
Almost in the States.
In the vast majority of places in the States, Ugadal is $100 plus tax. So I've seen up to $115 plus tax. So you're talking $120, $125. Used to be you could get, just a few years ago, you could get it in California for like $65 to $70 a bottle plus tax. And
not anymore.
Not anymore. Even in California, it's gone up. I'm not sure why the prices stayed lower there. who knows? But
Meanwhile, the 10's still like 55, right? 55, 60?
the 10, I think it's crept up a little bit. It used to be that $50 to $55 range, but with the price of just everything going up, this has stayed pretty in line. So we're talking 60-ish. If you might be able to find a good deal on it at $55.
Depending on where you are, the Ugadal might be double the price.
Yeah, because I think
for younger whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely may be double the price. Also, I think the Port Charlotte 10 and the Lechik 10 are at least 65 most of the time. I'm not sure about the Port Charlotte 10. The Lechik 10 is usually a little bit more expensive.
I think Port Charlotte's up there too because of that 50%.
Yeah, it's got a few extra points of ABV. But this is actually still, if you're looking for classic Isla at an affordable price, Ardbeg 10 is
the stalwart.
really difficult to ignore. Lefroy 10, 43% here, 40% in the UK, I think.
Yep.
So, and it's about the same price as the Ardbeg usually. Obviously, if you love the Lefroy profile, you're going to go for that regardless of its ABV. But yeah, I don't know. Seems like people just take the Ardbeg 10 for granted. And I'm just going to give it a few minutes in the spotlights and say it's still pretty damn good.
Yeah, well deserved.
Here we go. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's unmistakable too. It's just, it still just tastes like Ardbeg.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's better than a lot of their special releases lately.
Yeah, just in terms of like the whole package put together, the balance. Yeah, for sure.
Unless you're looking for a few extra points of proof, But
yeah, I mean, if you're looking for weird, experimental, bizarre whiskeys, then maybe those could be for you if you have the pocketbook for it. But yeah, just if you just want good, you can stop at the 10.
All right, so those are the samples that I had for underrated. So just to recap, we've got Glendronach 12 at 43%. If you're looking for an easy sipper with some sherry influence at a cheaper price than some of your more luxury-oriented brands, it's great. Like, I don't see how you ever complain about that. Glen Scotia 15, again, talking a little bit higher price point with this one. But for 15-year-olds these days, high quality Campbelltown available in most places. I don't know why people aren't just constantly screaming about this thing.
Yeah, that might be the most underrated in this lineup for me.
Then we talk about Ben Riach. Ben Riach as a whole,
right there,
a distillery just completely ignored, it seems like, by a lot of the enthusiast community, and it shouldn't be. It should at least be on your radar. And,
yes, 100%.
Not expensive bottlings at
no.
the 10, 12-year-old range either.
Lower end stuff's very reasonable.
Ardbeg 10, a classic that people take for granted, I think, and are willing to ignore because of some of the other shenanigans going on with Ardbeg. A few samples that I don't have here, and you may talk about a couple of these as well, but Glencadam 10, I know, just an absolutely stalwart whiskey that should be saying about much, much more. If you're interested in getting into bourbon casks, get Glencadam 10, and it will set you down a path that will reshape your whiskey cabinet. It did for me, at least. Deanston 12, another one that everyone knows is good. Everyone knows Deanston 12 is good, but it just doesn't quite get the... It's been around forever. I think it's another one that kind of gets taken for granted.
It's similar to Ardbeg 10, and sort of like, it's there, we have it, and just the limelight's pointing somewhere else.
Even Clynelish gets more shine than Deanston does, even though they have a somewhat similar profile, and Deanston, I think, is more consistent with quality.
That's what I hear.
Compared to the official bottling of the Clynelish 14.
Yep, that's what I hear, the same thing.
And another one that, a revelation for me, I want to find the 12-year-old bottling, but you just had this in a blind, but Altmore. I have the Altmore 18. It's one of the best whiskeys of the year for me. I didn't mention it in my whiskey of the year rant on our last video, but it's definitely a revelation. That 18-year-old is really hard to find in the States. I don't know how easy it is to find elsewhere, but I managed to find one, and it's one of the best whiskeys I've drank this year, just as an official bottling especially.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a bottle of the 12 to see how that goes down, but those are definitely a few of my underrated whiskeys, and in some cases distilleries across the board for Scotch.
Okay, I don't see a blemish on the whole list. Seems I'm not going to argue with any of those with you.
All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about Overrated. Now, I didn't bring nearly as many samples because actually I do have a couple. Actually, I have a lot of these on my list, but I didn't want to bring a whole suitcase full of samples. So I brought the positive things more than the negative things. But we do have one here, and this is, some of these are going to be controversial. I don't think any of the ones I talked about are controversial because I think most people will agree that they're good whiskeys. And it's just a matter of like where they rank for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I mean,
But I got a couple on my list of overrated that, again, it's not that I think they're bad. I think they just, some of these take attention away from other whiskeys because they get talked about so much. And the first one especially has been getting a lot, I think just for a long time. It kind of flies in the face of things like Ardbeg 10 and Glen Scotia 15 because this has been around forever.
Yes.
And yet the hype, the chatter kind of remains the same. And don't kill me for this because I think it's good whiskey, but it's Bunnahabhain 12.
it's a bold take.
So we're talking unpeated Islay, sherry forward,
Mhm.
and it's a very good whiskey. But some people talk about this in a reverence that I think, not that it doesn't deserve, but it almost like, it just blocks out the ability to talk about some of the other whiskeys I was talking about earlier. But I know, and Bunnahabhain as a whole, some of the pricing has been going up. Like, we were just at Binny's the other day, and it's $400 for a bottle of the 18-year-old, and it's like that's Dalmore pricing. And look, Bunnahabhain's better than the Dalmore, but I will take
No argument.
if I'm going to pay $400 for an 18-year-old, I'm going to take Bunnahabhain every day over the Dalmore. But
that doesn't mean you're going to pay
$400
for an 18.
We really hope the Bunnahabhain just stays reasonable. And I don't know if that's a price increase that's global or if it's something that's really just hitting the States. It's always
American
hard to
distributors.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the importers and things take liberties. But it hurt me to put this on the list, but it gets talked about so much that I think it's just too much. And we should make some room for some of these other whiskeys.
All right. Here we go. Let's give it a crack.
Man, it's still really good.
Yeah, that's still pretty good.
Again, this isn't to hate on Bunnahabhain 12. It's a really
It's
good
still
whiskey.
pretty good.
I know, it's actually really good right now. That sip was maybe one of the better sips I've had of it recently, but cut. No, I'm just joking. I'll stick with it because it's a known name, and it's not that expensive. It's still kind of that $65, $70 range in the U.S., so it's getting up there for 12-year-olds, but it's still like, okay, we can still kind of handle it, especially at the presentation. But yeah, that is actually really good. I just think we kind of, we're ignoring everything else here, and this just, I'm gonna stop talking about it because
it's kind of hard to keep putting it down.
Yeah, because it's not the whiskey's fault. It's not the whiskey's fault.
Yeah,
it's how people talk about it. It's like I just feel like there's other things that are on this level that don't get the attention. So if this light dimmed a little bit and we got a little bit more attention on some of these other ones, that was kind of my point. But there's a couple other whiskeys that I don't have samples for that I'm just going to run through real quick and give an explanation. I'm gonna get another really controversial one out of the way, and this one might surprise you. I'm not sure because I'm a Springbank Glengyle fan, but I think the Kilkerran 12 gets a little too much hype because I think people kind of pump it up as a Springbank 10 replacement, and it's not.
It's not. No, I
and again,
agree.
it's not the whiskey's fault. It's what other.
It's not supposed to be, right?
No,
yeah.
It's its own thing. But if you're going to put that thing side by side with most Springbank 10s, it's just, for me, it never... If you're trying to compare the two, it's not fair to the whiskey to do that. Kilkerran 12 is its own thing. It's really good. I just named the 16 in the last video as kind of my whiskey of the year. So it's not a knock against Glengyle by any stretch of the imagination. But I think a lot of people are telling themselves, like, maybe I can get a bottle of Kilkerran 12 and I can't of Springbank 10. So, like, yeah, this is really good. But here, it's at least, it's not quite as expensive as Springbank 10, but it's like 90 to 100, and Springbank's like 100 to 110.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's about $10-15
maybe
cheaper.
$10 cheaper.
Maybe. Yep.
And at that point, for a 12-year-old, it's almost like, what's the difference? I mean, one's 10, one's 12, and the 12 is cheaper. But that's not the distillery's fault. It's the distributors and the importers.
Yeah.
But so again, it's not a knock against the whiskey. I just think people are elevating it to a point that, like, you're gonna go all out to try to get a bottle of Kilkerran 12, and there's other really good options. You don't need to be that hyper focused on it. Now,
I'll agree. I've always enjoyed the Kilkerran 12, but yeah, I'll see it on the shelf, and like, okay, it's there.
Yeah, there's no need to be like, I've got to get one.
Yeah, no, it's really good. But yeah, if you want like unique, individual, distinct character, like, I think there's other things out there.
It's one of a lot of people put Ben Romick as a Springbank 10 replacement, and I don't really agree with that. Kilkerran 12 is closer. So yes, if you really struggle to get a Springbank 10, and there's a Kilkerran 12 available that will give you an insight into what you could expect, it's kind of like a cousin, I guess, which is, that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I'm putting it on the list just to say, like, you don't have to freak out and panic, FOMO, all the stuff over it. Because, it's good whiskey. And it doesn't get quite the hype as Springbank. But I haven't quite connected with the 12 the way I have with Springbank 10, which I absolutely love. And sometimes it feels like the Kilkerran 12 gets put on the same pedestal, and that hasn't been the case for me at this point.
I can see where you're coming from. Absolutely.
All right, which of these others do I actually want to mention now that I've dug a grave with saying that Bunnahabhain 12 and Kilkerran 12 are overrated? I'm going to say Clynelish 14. Now, Clynelish is one of my favorite distilleries of all time. And sometimes the 14 is really good.
It's the inconsistency, right?
Well, the bottle I have right now is one of the worst bottles of whiskey I have. Like, it's
okay. Yep.
It's really bad. I have one that I've been kind of holding on to for a while, and I decided to get a new one recently, and I opened the new one, and I really don't like it. It's really not good. And I know that's been kind of the case with Clynelish lately, where it's really inconsistent. But it's a distillery that carries so much clout that it's like, it makes me kind of mad that, and it's Diageo. I get it. I shouldn't spend any sort of emotional energy on what Diageo is doing, and I love Clynelish 14, but the bottle I have now is bad, and I think that should reflect to some degree on the expression as a whole. If you can't trust it.
Yeah, if you're going to release bad product, that should count for something.
Yeah. So I'm going to put I have a Kilkerran bottle and a Clynelish bottle is overrated.
Yeah.
And if he knows me better than anybody.
I was going to say, this is a heck of a overrated list so far. I'm not expecting some of these.
It's the principle of the thing.
Yeah.
And I've been drinking today, so I don't know.
Yeah, you respect it so much, the disappointment hurts you even more.
Exactly. And also let it be what it is. That's the with Kilkerran, that's the whole thing. Let Kilkerran be its thing. You don't have to make it the next Springbank. It can be its own thing.
As it should.
Yeah, I have a few others, like Oban 14. Nobody really talks about that online. It's another release from Diageo. It's 43%. It's heavily colored. The bottle I bought at the same time as I got the Clynelish 14. Again, is really bad. It tastes like artificial coloring. It's kind of just. There's none of the qualities I remember from even the bottle of Oban 14 that you gave me because you hated it.
Yep, I've never. I bought a bottle almost blind, and I gave it to him. I couldn't drink it.
The other ones, I'm gonna ignore the other ones I had as possible mentions on my list just because I'm gonna go from 14 subs to 9. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
Bunnahabhain 12, this is really, really good, and I feel bad for putting it on the list. It's just, there's other whiskeys out there. But There's some others that are going to be on my list, but I think this guy's going to steal some of my thunder. So I'm going to stop talking and let this guy bury his grave right next to me.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows who I am, so they can bury
Yes.
me all they want.
Yeah.
I have no stake in the game at the moment. All right. Yeah, I'm going to be probably a little bit more quick than that display, especially the underrated section. I do have a couple poured for us to drink. One is an underrated bottle that I have, and one's an overrated. It's an overrated pour from a distillery I haven't had a whole lot of success with. We'll put it that way. My list is going to be a little bit more fluid as well. I'm not necessarily only talking about specific bottles. I'm going to talk about my experience with a distillery, perhaps even just categories of things as well. So that's going to be a little bit more free form, but I also don't plan on dwelling too long on any of them specifically. But let's go ahead and drink the one on the left. This is going to be one of the first underrated ones. I'm not going to tell you what it is quite off the bat. It is Scotch whiskey, but just let me, kind of what we did with the Ladronic. Let me know what you think about it.
Yeah, so I got hit with what my mind registers as a decently aged bourbon, maybe refill cask. Super right in my wheelhouse right now. Although I have been drinking a lot more sherried whiskeys recently, but that might just be because of the weather. But I live in San Diego, so I don't,
The weather doesn't change a whole lot.
yeah, it's still basically summertime. But yeah, it's malt forward, but it's dense, but not like overwhelming. It still has that elegance and a roundness to it. You're getting your honeys and your vanillas. You're getting a touch of oak, not charry oak, not sawdust, right in the middle. Kind of that freshly hewn oak. That maybe not like freshly cut oak, but something that's been able to mellow out for a while. Some, if you were going to go to like a cooperage, and they had in the States that had all of the oak staves that have been air drying. That's like the smell that I'm thinking of. There's a fruitiness as well. Almost got a touch of grape.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe, which always makes me think that maybe there could be some barrel influence in there, but yeah, the fruitiness is really kind of coming out now. This is actually fantastic. I really like this one. This is right up my alley.
Great to hear so far. Do you want to know what it is? You want to drink it first?
Let's take a taste.
All right, here we go.
Ooh, yeah, there's a tropical fruit. We're talking some pineapple, some guava. There's maybe even like a touch of sourness, like a pomegranate. A little bit of red. Obviously malt forward as well. Yeah, that is definitely my type of whiskey right now. So I need to know what it is immediately.
All right, let's tell you. You said there was decent age on it. This is a core range 10-year-old bottling. This is Ben Nevis 10-year-old core range.
Oh man, underrated, hard to get, but yeah, let's put it that. Yeah, I think it probably. I have a 10-year-old, and I got a while ago, and I've been liking my well-aged Ben Nevis lately, but you can see where that tropical note that you get in some of the older Ben Nevises is shining through on this. That is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure part of the the reason you don't hear about it a lot is because it is a smaller outpour or outrange. Outturn. Sorry. But still, even despite that, you hear about Ben Nevis independent bottlings. You hear about people talking about old Ben Nevis all the time. And like I say, I'm not sure I've really heard much at all. Anybody mentioned just the core range bottle. But it's, like you said, it's almost like a dirty tropical. It's almost kind of imitating some of those other profiles that we've been talking about, both in this video and in previous ones. And for a 46% 10-year-old core range bottling,
No, that's fantastic. If that was on the shelf all the
hard
time,
to beat. Yeah.
Even in the States, I don't know if we can ever get this on the shelf. We probably have to get it from overseas, I think.
Yeah, I've never seen it on the shelf in the States. Nope.
And I know they do a cast strength release as well, and those things sell out
I'd imagine
immediately. I've never had a chance to get one of those. I'd love to try it, but yeah, that a lot of the times these days, young Ben Nevis coming from independent bottlers is drowned in sherry casks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're just these super heavily sherried whiskeys, and that doesn't mean that they're not good, but there's like Ben Nevis makes such good spirit.
Yeah, why make it Ben Nevis if you're gonna drown it? It can be anything.
But they release it at 5, 6, 7 years old, and I've resigned myself. I'm not buying those anymore. I bought 1 or 2. They're expensive. They're not cheap, and yeah, they're sherry bombs. But like and Ben Nevis, from my understanding, is no longer selling barrels to independent bottlers.
Correct.
So it's making me extra mad that they're releasing things at 5, 6, 7 years old. It's like, hold on to them. At least get them to like 10. At least let them be 10 years old. Don't put them in crazy casks because it's so hard to get good Ben Nevis.
No, absolutely. And I realize that, like I say, it's probably because of the outturn and how small they are. Yeah. But I just wanted to mention it as something, as a core range bottling, I'm betting a lot of people don't even know exist. So
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I just wanted to get that out there as an underrated bottling specifically. Another underrated bottling of mine, probably for similar reasons. Again, I don't know if it's actually underrated, but I kind of just want to shout it out again just to get some more presence out there on YouTube. You opened up with it on the first video of the day, the Edgered Hour 12 Caledonia.
Yeah.
46%. I know it's not their basic entry level, but it's like the next step up. I know that the Edgered Hour 10 is the 40% or 43%.
Yeah, it's a lower ABV, but still gets.
It's still very good.
Yeah,
but,
it still gets really high marks from a lot of YouTubers.
But that extra 3% or the non-chill filtered plus the sherry balance with the Edgered Hour with the dirtiness of the malt. Yeah. That's another one I just kind of want to shout out real quick. Again, small distillery.
Yeah, it's not
hard to find.
We do get it in the States. It's not always available. It comes in waves. But it's probably the first challenging whiskey that I learned to love, from Scotch at least. Mm-hmm. It was one, as I mentioned earlier, that at first it was like, what is this? It's dirty, it's herbal, it's kind of gross. But by the end of it, it was like, I have to immediately go out and buy a second bottle of this. And I don't do that a lot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, great choice.
All right. Now this one, I kind of want to have just a discussion with you about it. I'm not even necessarily saying it belongs on this list either necessarily, but I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on this brand, specifically in terms of its reputation amongst whiskey enthusiasts. Where do you think Hazelburn lies right now? Because to me, it's always there's Springbank and Longrow, and then there's also Hazel. They do Hazelburn. It's kind of tacked on. Again, I know it's the smallest outturn of the three. Maybe the fewest releases,
distilled, no peat,
but it's a very different style. Triple distilled, no peat. And you always kind of the only time you hear about it is when it's like lumped in with Springbank and Longrow.
Yeah, it's like the redheaded stepchild almost. Not that people don't like it, but it's like almost forgotten. I love Springbank, I love Longrow, I like Hazelburn too.
So do you think that as a brand it's kind of either underrated or overrated, or is it almost to a degree just sort of taken for granted? And I don't know. What do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's tough because I think, especially with the 10-year-old, it's probably one of the harder bottles to find in the States. Mm-hmm. You can actually probably have a better luck finding Springbank 10 than the Hazelburn 10.
Yeah, I agree. I see Springbank more often.
Longrow, the Longrow, the non-age statement gold label.
That's the easiest. I see the NAS Longrow all the time.
I haven't seen it much recently.
Oh, in Chicago, I see it everywhere.
Okay.
The NAS one.
So, but yeah, it seems you're right. But when you do hear someone talk about Hazelburn, especially the special release that they have every year, which is usually like 10, 12, 14, 15
the
years
Oloroso.
Old. It's usually the Oloroso release. Yep. Especially the more recent ones have gotten really high praise from the people who've had it. You can't buy it. It's not on the shelf. So it seems to be this weird little thing that no one really talks about it. But at least in the States, it seems like it's almost one of the harder ones to buy.
Yeah.
Maybe because, like you mentioned, it's a smaller outturn as a whole. But for me, I think if it was its own distillery, people would be really big fans of it. But it doesn't carry the funk and the smokiness or whatever of Springbank.
It's not as weird as the other two.
It's not as weird. It's not as distinct, but it's very high quality. Mm-hmm. So I think part of it is like if it was its own distillery, it would probably get more attention than it does. But because its profile is so much more light and delicate than its two brethren, even compared to Kilkerran,
yeah,
it goes under the radar. But still, you can't buy a bottle if you wanted to, without going to the auction houses. So, yeah, it's a bit of an enigma.
Yeah, I just always kind of viewed it as like this sort of weird, included, not included. It was just kind of attached by default, and that was kind of it.
I recently was able to pick up a bottle of the 10-year, and I haven't opened it. I just got it pretty recently, but it almost feels like a special bottle because, like, I can't. It's harder to get that, I think, than anything else.
Yeah, even though it's a core range bottle.
But it's usually priced about the same as the Kilkerran 12. It's usually cheaper than Springbank 10. It's usually in that kind of $90 range, and I'll have to. It's the first bottle I've had in a couple of years, to be honest. So I'm going to have to open that up. But some of the Oloroso releases, and you've sent me one or two, I think, recently.
Yeah, I have.
That were really good. So
I have, I think, the 15 and the 11, or whatever the two. Maybe it was a 13. I forget which two exactly. But
I had the 13.
Two of the recent ones.
I think I had the 13 from a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I liked it, but I didn't think it was super special. But I think when you sent me I think you sent me the 15 in blind. And I think it did really well. So.
Yes, yeah, it did. Yeah, so like that was just kind of a weird thought about, because you could almost put it in either category if you really wanted to, because it is kind of this weird enigma.
I think it's underrated, and I think it's only underrated because of the other whiskey that's made out of the same still. Like I said, if it was a building outside of Springbank, and they made the exact same thing, I think it would be
it'd be more celebrated specifically. Okay, cool. All right, and then the last one, it's just definitely just a category, but it's something I've really kind of been turned on to this year, and it's kind of a growing sentiment among whiskey too. But I kind of just wanted to echo it here. Just blended malts in general. Just the whole category of blended malts, the Orchard House, all the stuff Compass Box is doing, the stuff Douglas Lang is doing. Yeah. Just having that ability to specifically craft the exact spirit you want.
Yeah.
And I think, blending houses are showing that can be done excellently, consistently, and regularly. And a lot of people still, I feel, are kind of ignoring them.
Yeah, there's a few specific examples that have gotten some good attention over the last year or so.
Yep.
It's obviously the Thompson brothers have thought to be, have done a really great job with both their blended malt and their blended Scotch. McLean's Nose, kind of out of Ardnamurchan,
Well, McLean's Nose is a blended Scotch, so.
It is a blended Scotch. You're right.
Yep.
But Compass Box,
which also good, but yeah, it's.
But you're right. Yeah. Douglas Lang and all of they've got a wide range of things that has been going on Compass Box.
Yep.
Yeah, there's great whiskey to be found there, but I think what hurts it is people. I think our brains. Well, this is a fact. Our brains like to categorize things, and when you're talking, like it's difficult to say, oh, well, what kind of whiskey is Orchard House? Like what do you compare it to? And there's not a whole lot out there because it's a blended malt, right? You're trying to make something unique. And yes, you can say, okay, this is young, it's bourbon barrel forward, it's very fruity. What other options are out there? I think it's easy to walk by. In the US, it's usually in a completely different shelf.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a single malt Scotch, like you're not even going to see the blended malts.
You have to go out of your way to find them.
Yep. The blended malts will be like right next to the bourbons or something like that, and you might not completely.
Or it's
miss it.
across the aisle on the other side of the shelf or something. Yeah.
It's like in between Irish whiskey and Indian whiskey or something. It's just it's always in a weird spot, so you you don't even know it exists if you don't know what you're looking for. And even sometimes you're looking for it, you have to ask someone in the store, like, hey, do you carry this? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's it's right over there.
But no, like I just said, this has kind of been a rising tide this last year or two, and I just kind of wanted to echo that sentiment because I still it still sounds like some people are ignoring it, and just wanted to echo it and create some consistency there. All right, let's move into some overrated stuff. We'll just start off with what I'm sort of infamously known for my dislike is a strong word. Disdain might be more accurate, but we've talked about it at length in the past. But let's get it on film for the first time ever. Aaron 10, wildly overrated.
Wildly overrated.
Thoughts?
I don't know. Wildly is strong for me, especially since last time you sent it to me in a blind, it won the blind. But I also,
much to my disdain.
That was
very.
It was like that Simpsons episode where they're like slowly replaying like the moment that Ralph's heart breaks.
You can see the moment where his heart breaks.
Yeah. It was like But I haven't had a bottle in a couple years. But I also it's one of those bottles that it's good whiskey for me. And I can understand why it gets the attention it gets because it's accessible. But for me, I'm past what Aaron 10 brings, and there's a lot of other 10-year-olds that are more interesting for me. Yeah. But you put it in that blind, and that night it was magical. So I will always have a hard time just being like, it's bad.
Yeah, just I don't know. On my palate, Aaron 10 is like the base default definition of whiskey. Like it's just. There's nothing to me that like again, it's good. It's 46%. There's nothing necessarily bad about it. It's just the baseline kind of for me at almost every part of it. Glencairn 10, I think, does it. I mean, it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit different. It's a bit more tropical. But I think
I agree with you.
I like Glencairn 10.
I would take a bottle of Glencairn 10 over Aaron 10 any day of the week.
Yep. Like they're both 10-year-old bourbon, ex-bourbon scotches. And I think there's a few examples. Like I said, Aaron 10's not bad. There's nothing negative necessarily to say about it. But I just don't understand the hype and like the other than the accessibility of it. I think it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. In terms of another specific bottling, but this also is kind of the whole brand as well. And again, we've talked about it before. I actually just gave away the rest of a bottle of this yesterday. My specific bottle here is the Knob Creek 15. I can't stand it. I like older bourbons generally, but Knob Creek 15 to me is like you licking a board, and there's not a whole else. There's nothing else there for me to enjoy. But I've historically not liked very much from Knob Creek either. It's in terms of even bourbons there are bourbons that I love and really enjoy. Knob Creek has been very rarely in that mix. So, thoughts there?
I mean, I think the Knob Creek 15 won a blind from
just recently. Very recently.
And you brought it to the Christmas party last night, and
everyone else loved
named
it
as their best whiskey of the night. They beat out Midwinter's Night Dream and all that stuff. So it is one of those things where, sometimes you're gonna get a whiskey that just hits your tongue, and for whatever combination of wires that go from your tongue to your brain, yours are different than literally every other human being on the planet because you're obviously wrong.
Yeah, that's fair. I have no problem being wrong.
It's like, I mean, what are you gonna do? You taste it, you don't like it, you don't like it. You drank about half the bottle, it looked like, maybe even more. And
I tried to like it.
Yeah.
I really did.
Won the blind for me like literally a few weeks back, I think, and everyone loved it last night. So I was like, hey, just let them take the bottle because they loved it so much, and he was generous enough to let them have it.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Again, it's that's overrated just to me specifically. Everyone seems to love it, so it's more for them.
Yeah.
All All right, and then real quick, I just want to go over a couple of distilleries, Scotch distilleries. I'm not claiming that like the whole distillery is overrated, or I'm just talking about my personal experience with them. I feel like typically people enjoy them, and other than some unique expressions, which we'll kind of talk about, generally speaking, I'm still looking for that wow moment with like, they're more average or accessible releases. So you bought a really high like epic bottle a couple years ago, and I agreed. I loved it. But besides that one bottle, I'm still sort of seeking that wow moment with Mortlock.
Mortlock. Yeah, I will actually agree there. I've had a few other independent bottlings that have been the one I've been drinking it's 18 years old. It says it's refill sherry, which is supposed to be where Mortlock shines. It's a Murray and McDavid bottling from a few years. It was actually old, I think, when I bought it. And it's really good. It's a great whiskey, but it doesn't have like the holy crap, this is good like that 25-year-old had.
Yeah.
Now, I have a few other bottles that I've been kind of waiting in the wings because I've been drinking this 18-year-old. I actually just bought two at Benny's yesterday. One is a 10-year-old first fill sherry, and then they had one bottle left of a 14-year-old like refill bourbon. Because I think that's going to be my goal this year.
I might have that over there.
You might.
The 14.
Yeah, they had one bottle left at this one. But it was $100, and for 14-year-old Mortlock, that's like the best deal you're ever going to get in the States, at least. And I was like, all right, I passed on this bottle like 10 times. I'm not going to leave it here now. So it sounds like it hasn't changed your mind, but I think I have enough bottles of Mortlock now, and I've been going through them slowly. I think I'm just going to say this year, I'm going to decide, because in my brain, I love Mortlock. But yeah, that might be based on like one or two drinks.
Let's see which way this goes, because your pour here is a 46% 15-year-old Mortlock.
I have been nosing this and thinking this nose is unbelievably good.
All right. So far so good.
I've been hoping that I was like, this better not be on his overrated list because.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's got some of that coastal like element to it.
I actually don't care for this nose either.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love this nose. I've been this whole time. I'm like, when are we gonna drink this? Why does he keep talking? I want to like drink this. Yeah.
Well, here we go. Let's do it.
Let's go. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's got some of the tropical notes, but it's like the Ben Nevis, but like super dirty. And now there's coming in like a almost like it's got a bit of a mint to it, which I don't always like. But because the dirtiness is still there, I kind of like it. Honey, I really like that. Yeah, this is very good.
Up front, like the front palate on this, I do really enjoy. But the mid to the finish, it kind of loses me. Which is weird because I typically like dirty. I like this. Like I like savory. This is Mortlock. Sounds like on paper everything I should like.
Yeah.
And I'm not. It's just not working.
It hasn't clicked yet. This is fantastic. No, I'm a big fan of this. Yeah. No, that's what I think Mortlock should taste like. So.
All right. Well, fantastic.
I guess we'll be fighting once we turn the camera off.
Yeah, no problem there. All right, and then just one more real thing, kind of similar to the Mortlock. I'll be honest, I have had less of that next distillery, but I'm only really mentioning it because it's again on paper something I should love, and I'm still again looking for that wow moment. And part of the reason I haven't found the wow moment is because you don't really see very many just independent bottlings of this either. And especially with the recent price developments, this is getting harder and harder for me to find. But I'm still waiting to find a really good Talisker.
Yeah.
That is just like, wow, yes, Here we go.
So Yeah, the only thing I could say about that is Talisker 10, I started out loving. I had a bottle of it fairly early on when I was like, I'm doing scotch. I love scotch. I had a bottle of it. And I kind of like, I, it's hard for me to explain exactly what I mean by saying this, but it was like sometimes you've been eating food and you like the food, but if you take one more bite, it's going to make you throw up.
Sure.
And it kind of like I had that feeling of just like, I don't want this bottle anymore. I want it to go, like, I'm done with it. But I suppose this is when I didn't have nearly as much whiskey as I had now. So it's a different mindset. Now I'm more happy. I'd be more than happy just to let it sit in the back of the cabinet until I'm ready for it again. And I wasn't super thrilled with it. Anyway, that kind of soured me on Talisker for a while. I found a bottle of the 18-year-old just relatively recently here in Wisconsin. Last time I was here for like $150, which is a great deal now.
Yeah.
And again, we're just talking about Punahou 18 is $400. So I know a lot of people are like have soured on the Talisker 18 because of the price increase. But I found one for a bottle that was, or for a price that was at least reasonable. And it was like, I'll never find one cheaper. So I bought it. I haven't opened it yet. 2 weeks ago, I had Talisker 25 for the first time in a bar.
Yeah, I think you sent me a picture of that.
That's pretty good. It was cheap because the funny story was we were at a restaurant that had it. And it was called, the restaurant was literally called like Whiskey and something. It had whiskey in the name of the restaurant. And they had a pretty mediocre whiskey selection, but it was okay.
Sure. Okay.
And right behind us on our table in a glass case, they had Talisker 25. And I asked what it cost. And it was something like $450 a glass or something like that. And I was like, okay, I had, maybe it was $250. It doesn't matter. It was to the point where
it was an absurd number.
You're ridiculous. Yeah. So we went to the Whiskey House in downtown San Diego. Who, if you're going there for bourbon, you better bring your wallet. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
But Scotch, they do great pricing on it, and they had it for $70 or $80 a glass, which compared to the $400 they just tried to sell it from. I'm like, well, I'm buying one for sure. And I ordered it, and the bartender's face just lit up like, yes. Oh, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm like, yeah, I do. You know.
I'm sure it wasn't the tip he was about to get.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And it was fantastic.
Okay.
So the 10-year-old, I agree, it's good, it's fine. The 18 people loved, and now it's out of reach. So yeah, it's one of these distilleries that's kind of in limbo, I feel.
Yeah, and especially as like a primarily peated spirit, I want to like it, but it's hard for me to justify spending, especially what they're asking now on some of the nicer stuff. So.
Yeah. If you have an opportunity to get a,
I'll have to check at Delilah's if we're there, if they have anything.
I'm sure they have. Yeah, if they have it on the menu, it's probably at least reasonable. But because I think I was looking what a bottle costs. And I think they're supposed to be like $700 or $800 a bottle. And I was like, you're charging for like 1 ounce of whiskey, half the bottle. And it's like, oh my goodness. Like, you guys are really proud. And it was like an old, I think it was an old label too. So I assume like they've had this bottle for a long time.
Yeah,
and if they're charging
$400 a gram for it.
Yeah. So if you have the opportunity to try the 25 for like under $100, and that's a lot of money for a whiskey. But like, If you, I think I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Okay, yeah. Like I say, I'm on the hunt for something that makes sense, and I can try. So, yeah, all right, that's it. That's really it for me.
All right, well, man, I don't know how to wrap this up. I think we both probably pissed a couple people off. Again, it's not necessarily that we don't like this stuff or we think they make bad whiskey. Sometimes it's the community that's overhyping things. Mm-hmm. Other times, like, there's certain distilleries that we just don't click with or we don't like yet, or we just have to have that moment where everything flips over. And for me, like I said, there's a lot of things that are really good out there these days, and sometimes the focus gets a little bit narrow, and I just want to kind of give a shout out to a few other things.
Widen it back out.
But I don't think we drank a bad whiskey today. Or at least this.
No, I'll agree to that.
and I'm going to take that bottle of Morlock home with me. So since you clearly stated to the world that you hate
It's
it
trash.
and it's disgusting.
It's disgusting trash.
All right. This is definitely the last video of the day. We drank quite a bit of whiskey today. If we do another one, I'll probably get banned from YouTube before I even get started. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And thank you again to Kevin for taking the time out to hang out with me and talk about whiskey in front of the world. So
Any day of the week.
until next time, cheers.
Cheers.